Hey there. Thanks for tuning in. You ready for another episode of my Bigfoot sighting? Alright then, let's do this.
Seen a bunch of rundown no-horse towns where the church is the backbone, loves in the plow, and the five-string melodies grooving, with the farmland rows where the roots run deep, beyond the noise of the busy streets, where the songs of the South are soothing. When I hear the front porch picking down, home rhythm ringing out, I don't run from banjo music. Yeah.
My Bigfoot sighting happened in Rogers, Arkansas. First time I didn't personally see it. I was sitting on the porch having a drink during the day after work, and a roommate come driving up, and he said he seen a guy in a monkey suit outside the tree line, and he wanted to go over there and mess with him. And I just chose not to. That ain't my forte. So this was about 4:30 in the afternoon, so there's plenty of sunlight out. And it was just a wash after that. I didn't hear nothing, didn't see nothing. I thought it was a guy in a monkey suit, like he said. Well, I don't know how much time went by, a year or so. I was going to go outside to do something when we got the side door in our house that leads to a two-car carport. And then you could see the 4-lane highway and then across the street, the strip mall. We're not in the country by no means right here, but we're not far away from a little bit. So I open the door and I come out the door. As soon as I take the 2 steps down and I look up, straight across the carport from me, there's one there just standing there. Big as day, even though it was night out, there's no second guessing it when it's about 15 feet in front of you and there's nothing obstructing it. I don't know if it was just the fear in me or the loud growl that it made, but it felt like when it roared, it pushed me backwards. But I was kind of in a hurry to get back in the house anyway. So I went ahead and skedaddled, went back in the house, got me a gun, and just hid out, laid on the floor, and waited. I've been watching too many movies where they're knocking on windows and stuff like that. So nothing else ever happened. So now I'm scared. I've seen this thing. It went from fiction to fact in a matter of seconds. Every time I go out of my house, I start carrying my 45 with me. Well, the third time it was kind of I run into it. I was over at the neighbor's house painting inside his garage, and I was talking to him about it. And there's 3 older gentlemen, well-to-do gentlemen, and they're kind of looking at me like I'm crazy. I'm like, I wouldn't open my big mouth if I was crazy and admit it by saying this stuff. I'm saying it because it really happened and I really seen it. And they're like, well, and there's one older gentleman that rides around on his little rascal. He just stayed quiet the whole time. He never talked much anyway. But so I finished painting the garage, whatever. Now we just brushed that all up under the carpet. Well, another time I had all these surveillance cameras on the corners of the houses and whatnot, and a dog run in the back. And I let my dog out one night, go to the bathroom, whatever, and I got a 52-inch TV that's got cable on it, and a 52 above it that's just running the cameras. And I look up at the cameras and I see my dog. She's backed up in the corner of her cage, just staring over and just cowing down to something. So I go outside, and then I hear that. I got to get me a witness. So I go back in the house before I even got my dog. I got the girl I was dating at the time, and I come outside, be quiet, and listen. I took her outside. We got up close to that dog run, and you could hear something. We couldn't tell if it was in a tree or around the corner of the house or what. It was pretty loud. He's loud eating, growling. But I don't think he could see us as well, because I'm sure he would have booked her. If we had known he was there, we would have really booked it out. But she got all scared, so she turns around and goes in the house. And then I get my dog, and me and the dog go in the house. I said, what do you think it is now? I said, because they all think I'm a little loony because I admitted to seeing this one the first time. And they're like, I don't know what it was. I'm like, you know what it was. You just ain't going to say it because you don't want to jump on the crazy train. So, no more times and months go by. I'm walking out to my truck one evening, and the garages from the house were about 30 yards away, and I parked by the garages a lot of the time. And as I'm going out to my truck, all of a sudden this wall of stink just hits me right in the face. And then it didn't take me long to think about the Arkansas skunk ape. Everybody calls it a little something different or geographically. So I just start high stepping into my truck. I get in my truck and I just back out and I go do what I'm going to do and whatnot. And this whole time I keep telling myself, I want to be the first one to put a bullet right between one of them guys' eyes. And as all this stuff's going on, I'm getting more and more scared of it to where I don't even want to draw on it if it did come to that, because of some other stuff that's about to happen. So now that I've smelt it, I've seen it, dog's seen it, we've heard it. I'm sitting on my couch again and cameras are up there running like always. And all of a sudden you can see this big head just walk right across the background of the night vision. And I was like, oh my God. So I grabbed my pistol, cigarette, and I go sneaking back out in the carport and I lay down and it's nothing. I mean, it booked somehow. Real quick like, because I didn't take a long time to get outside to take a peek at this thing. And I figured, well, I'll just lay here and smoke this cigarette and keep my eyes and ears open. As I'm doing this, there's no cars going up down the road. It's pretty late at night. And you don't even really hear the bugs or nothing. It's just a quiet night. Well, out of nowhere, you hear like open hand slap on a road sign. And just, and of course now I'm up on my knees and I'm crawling around. I'm trying to peek. I don't want to be seen, but I'm trying to see I never could find out what it was. There was no pedestrians walking, no bicyclists, no vehicles on the road. So I just assumed it got a pretty good jump on me in a matter of seconds. It was probably 100 yards away. There was a no obstructing run right there. There's just grass. So then, all these things are starting to add up. Well, I'm sitting on my couch another time, and I hear something outside. So I turn all my volumes down and whatnot, and I'm listening, and I can hear a chopper out there. It's like 1 a.m, but it's just hovering. It ain't moving. It ain't going nowhere. So I'm peeking out my blinds, and I'm trying to find out where it's coming from. And it's just all blacked out. All you can hear are the rotors. So I was like, well, I'm going to step outside into the carport, see if I can't see a little bit more. I go out in my carport, and I look across the street, and over there in that little strip mall there's two, like, Ford Granadas, what I call them, men in black cars. So I took my phone out, and I turned on my camera, and I reached around the corner, and I kind of cameraed their car for, I don't know, maybe 10 seconds, pulled it back in, put it in my pocket. This whole time you could hear them choppers, that one chopper out there. It was just so low and so dark. I know they got light flight, but they don't fly around with their lights off. So I go back in the house. I just hang out in the house. About 20 minutes later, I hear this big steel container door pull. Boom. And I'm like, that's kind of strange. And then a couple minutes later, another one. Boom. And about just a few minutes after that, there's two tractor trailers with like the containers on them, like the shipping containers. But then there was like no advertisements of a company on the door or nothing like that. And then after them trucks left, the car left, or the two cars left, and the chopper booked out. So now I'm thinking, well, what's our government doing that's so sneaky over there picking these things up? Because I know that's why they're there. They're not over there because the trout fishing's good. So after all that, I'm just, I just keep a lot of this stuff to myself because 80% of the people I told about the first sighting or anything like that, I already thought I was lying, stretching the story, or maybe I shouldn't have quit drinking as fast as I did. I should have brought myself down a little slower. But nonetheless, they were true sightings. So now I'm getting a little, I don't even like talking about it anymore. I don't even like asking about it. At that point, because nobody believes me. And I'm starting to believe that if somebody tells me they've seen one, I don't believe them for some reason. And I've seen one, so I know they're there. I know I'm not the only one that's ever seen one. So another time, me and the girlfriend, and this was probably a 3-year span. We were out there. We were going in my truck again. It was parked over by the garages. It was nighttime, and all of a sudden, we both walk right into that wall of smell again. She's like, "What's that smell?" And I was like, "See, I told you they didn't get them all. I believe they got 2, but there was a third one still." So I said, "Just hurry up and get in the truck." So we hurried up and jumped in the truck, booked out, and did what we had to do or whatever. So I really didn't have any more sightings after that, but I've had the neighbors, like, he's got a couple pear trees and whatnot between the 2 properties. I'd be over there talking to him. He's like, "Have you seen anybody out here stealing my pears?" He's like, "All my pears are gone." And they had blackberry bushes. All the blackberries would be picked off. All the pears all the way to the top of the tree are picked off. I said, "Well, is it somebody shaking the limbs and the pears that are ready to go falling off? Are they picking them all off the tree and the ground?" He's like, "Gotta be the homeless people. They're picking them up off the whole tree." And I'm like, "Well, I really wouldn't blame the homeless community. I'd say they probably come over here and get 1 or 2 of the good ones off the ground and shake one off a tree. But I really don't think they're going to climb up there and get them ones off the top." And he's like, "Well, what do you think?" And I'm like, "You guys know what I think. There's something that's tall enough running around here that can reach up there and get that stuff." So I think he's reluctant to believe it. But also during this time, he had found out his son, who's my age, was one of the people during the daylight driving their car. It's 4-lane road, driving their car, and looked over there and seen it as well, the same day as my roommate did. But nobody's talking about it. There still ain't a legit sighting in this area, if you ask anybody, even though a lot of people support it and say, "I believe." So that's pretty much the last of all that. Well, one day, me and my buddy and his wife were riding our bikes on the bike trail, and they had to jump on me. When we got back over here to where we live, they're like, "Did you see them choppers out there?" This is right before dusk. I'm like, "I did. There was one that was hovering out by a clearing, and then there was another one that was flying in a big circle around that one." And I'm like, "I told you guys, they come in with the choppers that one night." I said, "It ain't surprise me if they ain't rappelling down and snatching another one up in 2 choppers." And they believe. You know, they've had their own little experience, I guess, as well. But I hadn't really seen no more. I assumed the 2 choppers, the one, because it was dusk time, it wasn't dark, where they were running their little military operations through my buddy's backyard when they got caught, is what they say. So I think they got the 3rd one finally, because there's been nothing around here for a while, and I've been here ever since. And my biggest concern is be careful of who you tell, because not everybody's going to believe you. I consider myself brutally honest, and they, you know, when you tell a story to your own mother, your own father, and they look at you in the eyes and laugh like you're crazy. So if you do come in contact with one, maybe it's supposed to be kept a secret. And another thing is, don't tell nobody where you've seen it, because I believe the government runs some websites or some pages to feed off of people's sightings. So when you say, "I seen one in Shreveport, Louisiana," they book a team down there and check it out. You know, not telling nobody, and they're swooping them up. Why would they be doing that at nighttime over here? You know, there was only like one house that could really get the angle to see anything, and I was in it. And just being up at 1 o'clock in the morning hearing the chopper, you know, everybody around me, they're old people in the garden, so they're up at 4 and asleep by 7. So don't tell anybody where you've seen them, because I think the government's just going to feed off of that and go find them and get them. That's how come you don't see very many sightings in the same spot. Once they get told where they're at, it's like giving the enemy their position. They just swoop on in there and do what they do. And I even posted the Men in Black car on my Facebook, and had a couple people say, "What's that?" And I said, "It's Men in Black." And the conversations were just left at that. And I don't know when it got pulled or whatever, but somehow somebody pulled it off my Facebook. I never pulled it off. I thought it was kind of useless anyway. You couldn't see really what they were. That's why people were asking me, what is that? I had to explain to them about the cars and what they look like. So I guess that's pretty much all I got. I know right now when I go out at night, of course I don't carry a gun or nothing, but I ride my mountain bike a lot. I never look to the side. Head down, pedal fast. Anytime I go around up and down this road, because it's city on the one side, country on the other. And when I mean country, it ain't all that country. It's just old farmhouses, not necessarily lots of land, trees, stuff like that nature. There's a stream down the road. There used to be a lot of cows running out here, so there's a lot of flat grazing type land. And there's a shoe carnival over there in case he needs some new boots for the winter, because I know his feet got to get cold once in a while. But anyway, that's about all I got. I hope you guys enjoyed it. And just remember, don't tell everybody what you see. Some things are meant to be kept a secret.
My Bigfoot sighting happened when I was 7 years old, about July of 1975. I was standing in the living room of my house. TV was on, sunny outside. There was a breeze blowing, and we actually had the windows up. My mother was home, my brother was home, but they were in other parts of the house. I'm not sure where they were at, but I was in the living room playing with some stuff on the floor and watching TV. And I just happened to stand up and I was looking out the window. I see something coming across the field from across the road. Well, it drops out of sight. And then it comes back into view around a garage that was across the road. And it comes down the driveway to that house, across the main road, and then down our driveway. I'm 7 years old, so I can't really, guess at the height. I know my father had a 65 Ford Galaxy that was parked in the driveway. Still remember the car plain as day. It was white with a black vinyl top. And when this thing ran past the car, the top of the car was probably halfway between his chest and his belly button. His belly button was probably closer to the top of the car than his chest. It had like reddish brown hair. I can still remember the sun glistening off the hair. Didn't have a whole lot of hair around the face, the hands, and the feet. Its skin was, I don't know, it was kind of a palish white, pink color mixed in. But the thing I remember most about it is it was like it was gliding as it was running. Now, at the closest point this was to me, when it ran past the corner of our house where I was standing in the living room window, it was probably 7 feet from me. So, me being curious as it went out of sight, I ran out the door and run to the corner of the porch and looked. And I could see the corn moving where it was running through a cornfield behind the house. And where we lived at, we're less than a mile from Nolan Lake. And behind the cornfield, behind our house, was a deep holler that you could go into, and you could go for miles if you wanted to stay hidden in that holler. It was wooded. Since that time, there's been a lot of building around the lake, a lot of houses, but at that time there wasn't. So I wasn't sure what I saw. I just knew I'd never saw anything like that before. And that's led to me researching this thing. It's like, I still to this day, I get wondering, is that really what it was? But I can remember it plain as day. So everything I've read on Bigfoot and Sasquatch tells me that that's what it was. When I was 7 years old, we have 3 TV channels, so I didn't know a lot about that stuff then. But after I saw it, I still spent plenty of time in the woods. behind our house, and I never was really scared. There was a few times when I felt like I was being watched or something was watching me, but, I never felt scared. My cousins and myself, I never mentioned it to just my family, my brothers and sisters, and they always laughed at me and told me I was crazy. And they still to this day tell me I was crazy, but I tell them, I saw this thing. I can close my eyes and still see it running down our driveway past the house. But after it, I never was scared to go in the woods. Like I said, we spend a lot of time in the woods. And there was a few times where, I feel like something was watching me, but I'd look around, couldn't see nothing. So, we'd just go on about what we was doing, playing in woods, camping, or whatever. But, I never was scared. And then, I had another sighting, and I didn't see it plain, but I don't know what else it could be. When I was in my 20s, riding around with some friends, and we were going along a little gravel road next to Green River. And one of my friends had been drinking, and he asked me if I would stop. It was cold, snowing outside. Asked me if I'd stop and let him use the restroom on the side of the road. So there was a line of cedar trees, and right as the last cedar tree that we thought was a cedar tree went out of the edge of the headlights, it just started moving across the field. So needless to say, we kept going. And like I said, I can't honestly say that it was a Bigfoot, but I don't know what else would be like around 8 foot tall and just start walking off across the field. So that's my Bigfoot sighting. They are real.
My Bigfoot sighting took place in 1980 in Ontario near Otter Lake. I'd like to share my experience regarding my personal sighting, and I'll try to be as detailed as possible without being boring, so bear with me. The location was around Huntsville, Aspton, Ontario. The year was 1980. The duration of the exposure was about 2 minutes. It was a pretty significant sighting. It was early morning, daybreak in the summer. I'm from Michigan, and we went to a cabin up in Ontario, friends of ours owned. The group of people that went consisted of 2 adult women and 4 children. I was 12 at the time, and I was the oldest of the children. The cabin sat empty all year round unless briefly occupied by family, friends, or their guests. The cabin was beautiful, set in the middle of vast woods. About 100 feet from the cabin door stood a beautiful lake. The entire area was surrounded by old-growth forest. It was very, very beautiful. Nearest town was about 10 to 20 miles. We arrived that night super late. We took all our gear inside, and everyone pretty much went right to sleep. As soon as the sun came up, my little eyes were open, and I grabbed my tackle box and my fishing pole, and I was just excited to get to go fishing, and everyone was still asleep. I estimated it was about 6:30 in the morning. It was summertime, so it was light outside. I grabbed my stuff and headed out the door, and I'm walking down the path towards the lake, and all of a sudden all the hair on the back of my neck stood straight up. And I had the most intense feeling of being watched, as if someone was directly behind you, sneaking up on you. So I whirled around in the path, expecting to see my sister or one of the other kids, somebody sneaking up on me, and there was nothing there. It was shocking because I, really felt there was something there. And no sooner did I notice there was no one there, there was a large boulder about 15 feet from the cabin that jutted up out of the ground, approximately 5-6 feet wide by 6-7 feet tall. There was something on the side of it just peeking out. There was a black shape from, initial reaction. And so I zeroed in on it, and it ducked back behind the boulder. And so my heart dropped. I was like, okay, something's there. Is it a bear? And no sooner did that thought come out and it peeked out again, and it clearly was not a bear. I mean, it didn't have any ears. Even if a bear lays its ears back, there's lumps on its head. There was absolutely nothing. It had big shiny eyes, and the face looked like a face. So my heart drops in my sock. I look at the cabin. The cabin's about 20 feet away from me. The boulder is closer to the cabin than I am. And I thought, there's no way I could get there before whatever that is could come out. So I just stood my ground, and no sooner did I have that thought, this thing stood up. And when it stood up, it cleared the top of the boulder. The top of the boulder came approximately where the belly button area would be, just midriff. And the rest of it was standing up over the boulder looking at me. And I must have just figured, the jig is up. He's not going anywhere. He saw me, and he just stood up. And I lock eyes with this thing, and it's just massive. I'm a 12-year-old kid. I was still a pretty big kid, but this thing was standing over a 6-7 foot boulder. And the first thing I noticed, it was so large, like its shoulders were like the size of beach balls. It's just massive, massive shoulders. And it was about five foot across, and its head was huge, but it looked small in comparison to how wide it was. But I could clearly see its face. I mean, it was just so big that it looked like it was, standing right in front of me. And I guess looking back on it, it had a look on its face of total surprise. And I think it was mimicking me, because I'm sure I stood there with my mouth open, my eyes as big as they could get. And it had the same expression on its face, which, looking back on it's comical. But at the time, I wasn't thinking that. And then just after maybe about 5 seconds, it relaxed its face and totally looked like it was bored. And it just stood there. We just stood there and stared at each other for 20 seconds, 30 seconds. And it happened in such a way that I wasn't afraid. It didn't make any, other than the initial shock of seeing this being, it didn't do anything aggressive. Like I said, it mimicked my expression at first, and then it just stared at me. And it didn't, growl, scream, yell. It just looked at me. And I looked at it, and after approximately, like I said, 20 seconds or 30 seconds go by, it just kind of, I guess it got bored, and it never took its eyes off me and turned sideways and started walking to the tree line. And the tree line was probably about 25 feet away, and it took 3 steps. The steps were, they're very strange. It looked like it was going in slow motion almost. It swung its arms as it walked those 3 steps. But, in hindsight, looking back on it, it's almost as if the flat of its foot was double jointed. So it looked like it was walking in slow motion, but it didn't make any sound going across the lawn. And then once it got into the tree line, it just started destroying the forest. And there was breaking branches, trees. It sounded like green trees were snapping. It's so loud it sounded like gunshots. At that point, I decided to make a hasty retreat to the cabin. I got the message. I got in there, and everyone was still asleep. And I told my mom what just happened. And, of course, I just woke her up out of a sleep, and I was pale and I was shaking. So she knew, I wasn't telling a story, but she said, it was probably you just saw a bear. And, obviously it wasn't a bear. She asked me not to mention anything to the other kids, as this was the first day of 7 we were going to be at this cabin. So it was pretty tough not talking about it, not saying anything about it. And just witnessing something as life-changing as seeing a giant humanoid-looking hairy monster. So the best I can describe it, it was 9 to 10 feet tall. I mean, the top of that boulder, like I said, was like 6-7 feet, and I'm estimating. And it came to its midriff. So it stood well over that, and it was very heavily muscled, but lean. Like in the Patterson-Gimlin, Patty is pretty thick through the middle. This guy wasn't. It actually looked like he was really muscular but lean. It looked like maybe had a tough winter or something. I don't know. And for some reason, I had the impression that it wasn't very old, but it had wrinkles. The hair covered everything from the brow ridge to right under the nose and cheeks. It had kind of like a mustache beard combination. I could see its mouth was wide and thin. Its eyes were completely black. I couldn't see any whites at all. And they were very shiny. I remember because you could see them move. It looked like it had a great deal of intelligence, and it was calm, which is probably why I'm here to tell the story. Again, it did nothing aggressive, and it is perplexing. And that's my sighting.
Well, that's it for tonight's show. If you've had a Bigfoot sighting and would like to be a guest, please go to mybigfootsighting.com and let us know. Thanks for listening. Have a great night.
Seen a bunch of rundown no-horse towns where the church is the backbone, loves in the plow, and the five-string melodies grooving, with the farmland rows where the roots run deep, beyond the noise of the busy streets, where the songs of the South are soothing. When I hear the front porch picking down, home rhythm ringing out, I don't run from banjo music. Yeah.